Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. The Bible tells one big story of redemption, and we want to spend 5 minutes every day journeying through the Bible from start to finish and exploring how all of it points to Jesus.
Hi friends, welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. My name is Katie, and today we are finishing Exodus. Can you believe it? Let's dive into chapters 37 through 40. Chapter 37 continues with the creation of the tabernacle. Bezalel, who was handpicked by God to lead the creation of God's dwelling place, began to create works of art that would furnish the tabernacle, all in accordance to God's design. He created the Ark of the Covenant, the fixture that held the tablets of the Ten Commandments, in the most holy place of the tabernacle. He fixed it with 2 cherubim spreading their wings over the lid of the ark, or the mercy seat. He crafted the lampstand again just how God instructed. It had 6 branches going out of the lampstand. It was a hammered work of pure gold and would provide light to the tabernacle. He made an altar of incense, representing the prayers of Israel, and an altar of burnt offering, which were sacrifices that would be made on behalf of God's people. Bezalel used mirrors to create the bronze basin used to wash the hands and feet of the priests before they entered the holy place. He wove linens to create the hangings that decorated and divided the tabernacle, each created just as God ordains. In chapter 38, we get a brief summary of all that the Israelites gave in order to build the tabernacle. Scholars estimate that over 2,000 pounds of gold was used to create the tabernacle. Today, that would be worth over $56 million US. That's not even including the silver and bronze used. Next, they created the priest's garments, full of color and full of beauty, representing the glory of God. These garments would be passed on through generations of Aaron's sons, setting them apart as God's chosen mediators. And with that, the Israelites finished making the materials for the tabernacle. Moses found that all was done according to the Lord's specifications. It was finally ready. So Moses erected the tabernacle, placing each item exactly where God instructed, and the cloud of the glory of God descended on the tabernacle. God was officially with his people. Did these chapters sound familiar? They're a repeat of God's design for the tabernacle that was previously outlined in chapters 25 through 30. Moses uses about 10 chapters of the 40 chapters in Exodus to describe the details of God's dwelling place. A fourth of the book. Why? Moses emphasizes the holiness of God in this way. He is so holy, so magnificent that his dwelling place must be to his exact specifications, decorated exactly how he instructs, filled with priests consecrated exactly how he commands. The majesty of God can be felt in these details of the tabernacle. Don't forget, just a few chapters earlier, the Israelites were worshiping a golden calf that they created with their own hands. They experienced the abundant forgiveness of God despite their infidelity. They experienced God's goodness. They have a long journey ahead as they venture towards the promised land, but in the last few verses of Exodus, God promises to be with them. They can have great confidence as they journey onward because the promise of God's presence, the tabernacle, is in their midst. This tabernacle, described in these chapters, would be a dwelling place for God throughout the story of the Israelites until Solomon builds his temple 440 years later, detailed in 1 Kings. With the tabernacle, God fulfills his promise made to Moses in Exodus 29, 45, and 46, to be with the Israelites as their God and Lord. Fast forward to Isaiah 7:14. This verse tells us about the Son who is to come and be our God with us. It tells us about Jesus. That is the story of Exodus. It's the story of the Bible. God longs to dwell with his people, so much so that he ordained his one and only Son to carry the sins for all of us messy, broken, and wayward people. God allows Jesus to die on the cross, sacrificing once and for all and defeating sin once and for all so that we can stand with him in glory forever and ever. Exodus tells the story of all of us who trust in him. once a slave, oppressed under the weight of sin, but rescued by a gracious God who redeems us and carries us to glory. Isn't that amazing? Because of Jesus' sacrifice, we have a forever friend, a confidant, a teacher, a compassionate king, a light in our darkness. Jesus is the ultimate fulfillment of what God promises to Moses. And did you notice that as the Lord had commanded was repeated 19 times in chapters 36 through 40 when describing the building of the tabernacle? Moses emphasized the obedience of God's people to what they asked of him. This was a symbol of relationship between Israel and God. Their obedience signifies a trust in his leadership. And although we don't need to build a tabernacle today, we do need to learn a key lesson alongside Israel. We can look at our actions, like how we spend our time, what we spend our money on, who we spend our time with, the words we say, to tell us about our relationship with God. If we're trusting in him, our actions will reflect his character to the world around us. He will grow in us patience and kindness and self-control and all the other fruits of the Spirit, and others will get to know him through our obedience.